A lot of people online will get into conspiracy theories as a form of entertainment. For most people, they're like fun, what-if stories to get into, almost something like real-life fan fiction. For a good number of people out there, though, those conspiracy theories are completely real. When a bunch of moms on the internet who lost their kids either in custody battles or to CPS hopped on the conspiracy theories, things quickly got wildly out of control. With as big of a hot button as Q is on the internet, with various forms of social media and even YouTube itself trying to ban even negative discussions of the group, I'm going to have to use some workarounds to even discuss it. As you know, the first word of the group is Q and the second word is anon. Saying them together might get you flagged or even striked. So I'm just going to refer to the group as either Q or the Q movement throughout this video. Given that the Q movement is a massive topic on its own, it's impossible to really deep dive into their beliefs without a whole video dedicated to the topic. It's a far-right conspiracy theory that originated within the Pizzagate movement in 2016 and later really took form on 4chan a year or so after. To put it in the most basic of bullet points, they believe that the government is under full control of a satanic group that controls the deep state, one that they call the Cabal. They believe that this group does anything from engaging in political corruption to trafficking children all over the world. Sometimes the views get much more wild, with many saying that the Cabal goes as far as drinking the blood of children in order to retain their youth or engages in child sacrifice. With all the views they have, children have always been a large focus. When it comes to Q, there is a very strange subsection of believers that you likely haven't even heard about. While child abuse rings, baby blood drinkers, and the need to save children were always big talking points within the Q movement, there were a few prominent members within the group who decided to focus on things like CPS and child custody battles. There was, and still is, a pretty sizable subsection of the group that focuses on getting children back for unfit mothers who have had their kids taken away. While a portion of them likely believe in what they're preaching, a lot more of them operate by much more dubious means. Some prominent characters within these groups claim to be lawyers despite having no legal education or qualifications whatsoever. A lot of them operate on the sovereign citizen defense, which is an entire rabbit hole on its own. To put it simply, they believe that they aren't subject to any government laws unless they consent to being subject to them. This pseudo-legal belief is basically either a delusion, gullible people falling for misinformation, or an outright scam by people who know that it will never work as a legal defense. Nobody who has ever used this defense in a child custody case has ever won, but they still peddle it to desperate, usually mentally ill parents who see it as their one and only way out. One of these unfit mothers went by the name of Cynthia Absug. Cynthia had a son who, by the time he was 7 years old, she claimed had been suffering from a myriad of health problems. She said that he had experienced everything from seizures to heart problems over the years, never actually being able to cite what his specific disorder was. Eventually, she came to tell those who knew her that her son was suffering from a brain tumor and that he was dying. She would parade him around to friends and on social media as her poor, sick child, but the reality is that the boy was fine. Once this was discovered, the authorities were called. In May of 2019, the police found that Cynthia, quote, subjected her son to medical child abuse, commonly known as Munchausen syndrome by proxy. Her son was taken from her custody and placed into a foster home, where it has been said that he was doing much better. As soon as he was removed from Cynthia's care, all of his supposed symptoms vanished in an instant. Now he lives more or less a normal life, free from his mom's exploitation. Cynthia flew into a panic. In a spell of what she called extreme anxiety, she took to the internet and social media in order to find out how to get her son back. She ended up coming across a group online that claimed to be reforming the family court system. It seemed like a promising way to get her kid back. After all, if the entire system were to change, who's to say that she wouldn't benefit? She decided to go deeper down the rabbit hole and eventually reach out herself. One of the men she came across online was a minor online celebrity named Field McConnell. Now a man in his 70s, Field was a former Navy pilot turned major player in the conspiracy theorist scene. Field started out being mainly interested in 9/11 conspiracies, losing his career at Northwest Airlines after he refused to take part in a routine, mandatory neurological exam. He adamantly refused to do so, all the while alleging that Boeing was rigging their planes to explode in order to facilitate more 9/11 style attacks. Field then engaged in a series of frivolous lawsuits that he never saw any benefit from. While most people who knew him felt that he was either losing his mind in his old age or was being manipulated, he was able to garner a pretty loyal group of followers online. Going by the name Abel Danger, he garnered quite a bit of respect within the conspiracy scene. Gradually though, Field grew bored with the 9/11 conspiracies. Once Q came along, he gradually went down that path instead. Growing obsessed with the idea of the government sex trafficking networks, he grew particularly interested in the idea that CPS agents were being used to kidnap kids. Eventually, he came up with the idea of what he called McConnell Veterans Ranch, a strange plan in which he would build this heavenly compound in Texas where military veterans and child victims he rescued would live together in harmony under his guidance. Claiming that he was engaging in various different legal fights and other efforts in order to take the system down, he took all sorts of donations from his viewers over the years. One of the pseudo-legal law firms that he made connections with was one that called themselves E-Claws. They were one of the fringe groups that clinged on to the idea of sovereign citizenship. The men who ran E-Claws, Kirk Pendergrass and his partner Christopher Hallett, had developed quite close ties with Q believers who believed that CPS agents were stealing children and trafficking them. In long, rambling live streams and videos on YouTube, most of which have now been deleted, Field and the members of E-Claws would speak out about how the mothers who had their children taken away by CPS were nothing more than victims of the deep state, all while raking in donations from their viewers who agreed and supported their cause. Cynthia Absug ate these videos up, feeling that it described her cause perfectly. Still denying that she had Munchausen syndrome, she was able to convince some of her friends and family of the conspiracy as well. One of her family members ended up making a GoFundMe page for her, saying that they needed to hire a lawyer to get Cynthia's son back, still asserting that he suffered from seizures and various neurological disorders. It even said that the authorities made up the Munchausen talking point, in their words, to justify the unjustified removal of children. Cynthia began appearing on various Q-themed shows and streams over time, becoming somewhat of a well-known figure in the circuit as well. She mainly spoke about child sex trafficking in Colorado's child welfare system while using her own story as evidence. Her story really resonated with other moms, especially moms in the same predicament. She told them that their kids were likely being used by either the cabal or Hollywood as either objects of sexual abuse or blood sacrifices in satanic rituals.
I'm a single mother of 4 children. I have 2 older boys, and then I have my 7-year-old son, Michael, who has some health conditions, and but I would do anything for my son, just to let you know. By January of 2000, I had the CPS, which stands for Child Protective Services, letting me know they had received a call for possible misrepresentation of my son's illness. You know, as being a mom, not knowing the Child Protective Services in some areas is a front for child trafficking, and has child trafficking rings in certain areas, I did not know I didn't know what to look out for. So that's the Munchausen syndrome by proxy on another, or fictitious disorder, is what they're accusing me of now.
After a short period of time, Cynthia caught the attention of Field McConnell, E-Claws, and what they were calling Children's Crusade. Field even spoke to Cynthia directly on an episode of his show in August of 2019, urging her not to get a lawyer to fight for her son. Instead, he insisted that he would report directly to Donald and Melania Trump on the case and that everything would be settled.
No. You're not going to need an attorney. Attorneys they're not the solution, they're the problem. I will get all your information where it needs to go, which is Trump, via the federal protection people that are working with Timothy Charles Homseth, and via the Pentagon pedophile task force. And that stuff, if it has enough sizzle, and yours certainly does, in my estimation, it'll get to Trump and Melania, and they're not going to allow this to continue. Do you mind if we calm down a little bit and I read you Psalm 91?
No, please do. That'd be great. I didn't mean to get so excited, but it's just a tough subject.
While it is almost certain that Field had no contact with Donald Trump or his family and that, even if he did, a random child custody case wouldn't have been a priority, Cynthia didn't care. She wholeheartedly believed him. Eventually, Field decided to send a man named Ryan Wilson, a Q member from Arkansas, out to protect Cynthia, saying that the deep state would now be on a mission to destroy her. The idea that one random man from Arkansas could protect her from the wrath of an evil organization that even the whole US military was under the rule of seemed a bit unrealistic, but Cynthia hung on to his every word. Cynthia was so enamored with the idea that she told her daughter that Ryan Wilson was a trained sniper that could keep them safe. Cynthia's daughter was not a follower of the same beliefs as her mom and immediately came to feel that this whole thing was getting wildly out of control. Cynthia began to only leave her home for periodic meetings with other Q members, bringing Ryan Wilson along with her everywhere. She even bought a gun for herself and made some plans to go training with it at a local range. This is when Ryan and Cynthia began planning what they called the raid. They decided that they would attack the foster home in which her son was now being raised, take her son back at gunpoint, and flee into the night. Other Q believers had told them that they found the boy's new address, saying that the foster family was a bunch of Satan worshippers after all. Whether or not they had actually found the house is unknown, but Cynthia became so excited about the plan that she informed her daughter of what they were going to do. Cynthia's 16-year-old daughter decided that she couldn't let her mom kill someone or possibly be killed due to these beliefs, so she did the only thing she could think of. She called the police and told them what her mom was about to do. Word of the call soon got out. Cynthia quickly took to the internet to get some advice. Her usual circle of Q believers online told her to flee the home and go on the run. She reached out to a bunch of other believers, including Field McConnell, and begged for help. Cynthia and Ryan fled the home and departed on a journey that would take them over 5,500 miles across the United States over several months. After a while of being on the run, Cynthia began to worry that the Children's Crusade wasn't actually helping her. But still, this didn't lead to her questioning her beliefs. Instead, she mainly changed her focus. Now, Cynthia decided to shift her attention away from Field McConnell and Children's Crusade and make the E-Claws legal team her priority. They drove out to Ocala, Florida, where one of the owners of E-Claws, Christopher Hallett, was working. Christopher had, over time, made a name for himself amongst other moms who had had their children taken away, delivering them false promises of using his mysterious legal know-how that he picked up by working loss prevention for different companies to get their kids back. Despite not being registered as a lawyer in the state of Florida, Christopher presented himself as one. He mainly advertised his legal help on both Facebook and on the Q side of YouTube. Many of his videos were the equivalent of multi-hour-long PowerPoint presentations filled with false promises and nonsensical legal jargon. Like many of the others, he would rake in fairly large amounts of donations for his supposed cause. However, one thing that Christopher failed to disclose was that his legal methods had universally failed. He had never once succeeded in changing the system in any way and had never gotten a child back from CPS even once. Once in a while, when a case he boasted of being a surefire win would fail, he would take to social media to deliver excuses on why his legal defenses hadn't worked, usually blaming corrupt judges in one way or another.
Basically, the long and the short of it is the what the federal court said about dismissing my case for lack of subject matter jurisdiction, being that the charges were breach of trust and libel, is inaccurate. And the reason that we know that on its face is because the appellate court assigned the U.S. government counsel upon appeal. Now, had the original federal judge caught the allegation against the U.S. government, he would have signed the federal government counsel at that time. So that's proof on its face that the original judge's assessment was inaccurate.
Still though, his followers' faith in him never faltered. Cynthia soon arrived at Christopher's door in Florida, begging him to help out with her case, convinced that he was the man that would make all of this go away. She stayed with him for a little while, hoping that he would come up with some miracle method in order to win her case. However, after waiting a while, she came to realize that, much like Children's Crusade, Christopher wasn't really making any headway at all in her case, or really accomplishing anything. He was all talk. Once again disillusioned, she and Ryan left his home and set off for their next destination, another Q member in Dumas, Arkansas. This is where a board member of Children's Crusade, a woman named Sarah Dunklin, was living. Sarah was, at the time, Ryan Wilson's girlfriend, so they felt that they could trust her more than any of the other people who have tried to help them so far. Sarah wasn't an insignificant player in the game either. She actually held the GOP chair in Desha County. Her father, Bill Duncan, had also just barely lost a Republican state Senate primary the previous March. Sarah, though, had become lost in her beliefs as well. Rather than referring to herself by her name, she started to address herself in a very Prince fashion, calling herself Woman by the Calling of Sarah. She had been harassing her ex-husband, his attorney, and her ex-mother-in-law for quite a while about various marital and custody issues herself, usually rambling about the usual QAnon talking points and name-dropping Field McConnell. While working with Sarah, Cynthia was living in a partially burned-out motel by the Arkansas River. After a few weeks, she began to lose faith in Sarah as well. She began to feel that all of the members of Children Crusade were doing nothing but stringing her along. Cynthia began to hear of FBI raids at previous locations she had stayed, slowly coming to realize that the feds were on her trail and it was only a matter of time before she would be caught. All the while, none of the people she had contacted had actually been able to help out her cause in any way. Still though, her belief in Q didn't waver. Instead, she decided to, once again, hit the road to meet another contact, this time in Kalispell, Montana. However, little did Cynthia know, the FBI had closed in on her location. They were a lot closer to catching her than she had assumed. After being on the run for a bit over 3 months, the FBI caught up to Cynthia in a car in Montana, arresting her on the spot and ending her long journey in which she accomplished absolutely nothing. Cynthia was looking at a felony charge, conspiracy to commit a kidnapping. She tried to file a petition for habeas corpus using some of the sovereign citizen lingo she had picked up along her journey, but the judge shot it down, calling it frivolous. Cynthia made her first appearance in a hearing months later in August, in which her bail was set at $250,000, an amount that she had no hope of paying. The district attorney said, "Miss Absug's son was lawfully removed from her custody in order to protect him from imminent danger. There's no telling what may have happened to that little boy if the kidnapping plot had succeeded." Based on what Cynthia's daughter had presented to the police, the judge ruled that there was enough information that she could indeed stand trial on the conspiracy charge. Now, rather than just losing her son to the CPS, the decision to terminate all of her rights to her son entirely was on the table. Cynthia's defense adamantly maintained that there was no actual evidence of the kidnapping plot and that everything had been made up by her daughter. However, both Cynthia's daughter and her adult son decided to testify against their mother in court about what she had been saying and about how dangerous her beliefs had really been getting. In addition, 2 different doctors were also brought into the trial to testify that her son that had been taken away had shown 0 signs of the conditions that Cynthia claimed him to have. Cynthia herself continued to spout her beliefs, saying that social workers were getting paid millions underneath the table to take children from loving parents like her and deliver them to the cabal. She said that she was only trying to help her son in the end. The judge simply reprimanded her for a clear lack of remorse or any sense of wrongdoing. Eventually, the jury came to a verdict and it was time for the judge to deliver. Cynthia was indeed found guilty on a charge of conspiracy to commit second-degree kidnapping and also a new charge of child abuse after the testimony of the doctors brought a lot to light. Surprisingly though, despite her plans, her dangerous beliefs, and her time on the run, she was hit with a very light sentence. She was sentenced to 60 days in jail and 2 years of supervised probation. Cynthia's son's foster mother was really displeased with the sentence. As it came to be known during the trial, she and her family were forced to go under police protection for all of the months that she was on the run, and even afterwards, being forced to live in a hotel the entire time. Believing that she was still living in danger due to what Cynthia was spreading about her online, she said, "I don't think 60 days will come close to dealing with what we have to deal with." Even with Cynthia put away, E-Claws and the other pseudo-legal groups online were far from being finished. After all, the longer that they could keep these fraudulent cases coming in, the longer that they could keep the donations flowing. It didn't really matter if they never got anything done. Their audience was more than invested in their case, being hooked to the point where they were fueled by pure loyalty at this point. Much like Cynthia, a woman living in Kentucky named Neely Blanchard was getting into the Q scene herself. She had actually been deep in the game for quite a while now, with some of the only existing video of her being that of her attendance at a Trump rally in 2018. Eventually, Neely came to lose custody of her 2 daughters for reasons that have never been made entirely clear. While some comments on her personal Facebook page have asserted that she was dealing drugs, it has never been proven. All the police have said was that she had a long history of mental illness, was a self-described sovereign citizen, and made a habit of making it clear to people that she owned a gun and wasn't afraid of using it. After Neely's daughters were taken away, they weren't really taken anywhere that far. They were simply placed in custody of the girl's paternal grandmother, Susan, instead. In a court order that described Neely as extremely unstable, guardianship of her 2 7-year-old daughters was given to their grandmother for the foreseeable future. Neely didn't do much to disprove the idea that she was unstable. Instead, she took her own kids from their grandmother's house in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and refused to bring them back. While she was only supposed to have them for a day visit, she instead went on the run with them for 5 days. When she went on the run, she delivered several long, rambling letters about her beliefs to various local officials. In the letters, she used some of the usual sovereign citizen lingo popularized by E-Clause, saying that she was a sovereign citizen and staked claim on her kids. One of the terms that she used that stuck out to investigators was, "I am now not deemed dead lost at sea." She thought that this was some sort of legal gotcha move, but the police didn't really feel the same. The police eventually caught up with Neely, finding her in Dawson Springs, Kentucky with her daughters, hiding in a house with a number of other self-proclaimed sovereign citizens. She was arrested on the spot and indicted on charges of kidnapping, once again having her kids placed back into the custody of their grandmother. Neely was able to pay her bail. While released, she didn't change her mind about any of those beliefs. On the contrary, she doubled down. One of the first things she did was take an oath to her group, a group that she doesn't really specify.
I, Neely Petrie Blanchard, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter. So help me God. Where we go one, we go all. God bless America.
Neely started posting pictures of herself wearing Q t-shirts online, along with posting claims that JFK is still alive and well. However, now that she was out and free to post on social media again, she remembered that her biggest problem still hadn't been solved. She still hadn't gotten her daughters back. She couldn't think of anyone better to help her in this endeavor than Christopher Hallett of E-Clause. By now, Christopher had only built his name up even more on YouTube and within Q circles. His Twitter and Facebook had only gained more traction as well. Plenty of desperate, unfit moms were flocking to his channels in the hopes of getting their kids back. Christopher began to make the bold claim that Donald Trump had authorized him to create an entirely separate legal system. Family court judges, however, weren't having it. They questioned why the president would appoint a random man in Florida with no qualifications to run something as overwhelming as an entirely new legal system. When he brought this up in one court case, a judge dismissed his claims as rambling, saying, "The court declines to entertain the plaintiff's fantasy that he is acting at the behest of the president." Usually, the women who ended up trying to get Christopher's help would only end up putting themselves in a worse position than before with the courts. After all, the judge would only go on to question their mental health that much more when it turned out they were fully invested in Christopher's bogus claims. Still though, somehow his reputation only grew. Neely was more than convinced that he would be the one that would finally win her case and get her children back from their grandmother. After Neely reached out to Christopher, he was more than happy to take up the case. He promised that he would use his revolutionary E-Clause legal techniques to get her kids back. She was all in, completely devoting herself to the movement. She began to list herself on Facebook as an E-Clause agent. Not only that, she started buying up some E-Clause merch, which is a thing that exists, and posted pictures wearing it online. Going even further to the extreme, she was seen driving around in a Ford Escape with a license plate that read E-Clause. She became a moderator of the various E-Clause groups online, even becoming one of the people who would accept or deny incoming cases. It wasn't too long before Neely was appearing regularly on E-Clause's web shows hosted by Kirk and Christopher. She would appear on the programs numerous times, usually speaking about her case in one way or another. She also made many of her own videos to post, sometimes going into a bit more detail about her ordeal.
I am one of those parents. I was arrested in 2013 for transporting child under the age of 18, pending a custody order and not returning within 72 hours. Well, it was a bogus charge. First of all, this is not just any child. This is my daughter.
By 2020, Neely had been working with E-Clause for a few years. Her Twitter was littered with Q-esque posts and retweets from Christopher. Christopher told his followers that he had invented some sort of artificial intelligence system while he was working for various corporations before the invention of the internet. He said that, later, family courts took and weaponized his own system to go after kids. As Neely explained,
E-Clause he told me that there was things that were going on with artificial intelligence, that that he had designed algorithms for systems for corporations. So before the internet, was out, there were systems that were designed, right? And he basically, he said that the system that he had designed was weaponized by the family courts. So the courts were using his system that he designed, okay, and they weaponized the family courts. So he had to go in and put an antivirus into the systems to fix I guess, what had happened, or maybe to try to reverse it, or,
However, she was slowly growing disillusioned with Christopher Hallett after seeing no results, much like Cynthia before her. However, unlike Cynthia, she came to much different conclusions. She didn't come to assume that Christopher was a hack or that he didn't know as much about the law as he claimed. Instead, she started to believe that he was in on it. In her mind, maybe, just maybe, he had been a member of the cabal all along. Neely started to feel like Christopher was working against her on purpose, maybe even assisting the government in keeping her kids away from her. She thought, what if this is all just an elaborate trick to distract me and keep me from actually getting my kids back in a legitimate way? She came to the conclusion that this must be the truth and began to plot how she would go about solving the problem. Neely asked if she could stay overnight at Christopher's place one night, to which he agreed. Little did anyone know, she brought her husband's gun with her that day, stashing it away on the sofa. By that night, there was another mother and daughter who were staying at the home as well. Neely opened up to these two, telling them both that Christopher Hallett was a liar, saying that he had been the one to send her kids to their grandmother's house all along. They didn't know what to make of the accusation she was making. Later on, Neely went off on her own to speak with Christopher in the kitchen. The mother and her daughter in the home heard what they thought was a firework. They ran into the kitchen to see Christopher standing there with an expression of pain on his face. Neely was there, standing behind him, holding a pistol that appeared to be jammed. Christopher pleaded with her, saying, "Oh shit, oh God, please no." But Neely wasn't having any of it. She looked at him and said, "You're hurting my children, you bastard." That was when she noticed the two witnesses looking at her. She pulled up her gun and aimed at the two women, causing them to flee into the other room. As the mother and her daughter fled to the other end of the house, Neely was able to unjam the gun. They heard numerous more gunshots ring out as they ran for cover. Neely continued to empty the magazine into Christopher at near point-blank range, wanting to make sure that he was dead once and for all. The two witnesses called the police, and they were on the scene shortly after. There they found Christopher Hallett very obviously dead from a number of gunshot wounds. With the amount of shell casings and live bullets scattered around the scene, it was pretty clear that a frantic shooting had taken place. However, Neely was already gone. The witnesses told the police that she had already gotten into her car and fled the scene. The police report read, "It was speculated that the victim was shot by Neely due to her belief that the victim might have been working against her or working to assist the government in keeping her children away from her." Neely, now on the run, first went out and picked up her husband. The two took off on Interstate 75 and headed off towards Georgia. Meanwhile, the police had issued a nationwide alert to law enforcement agencies about her. Through their investigation, they were able to find her location in Georgia shortly after. Local authorities were alerted and came out to arrest both her and her husband. While in cuffs, Neely began to frantically explain her views. She said that if she were brought back to Florida, she's worried that she would be killed.
And if I go back to Florida, they're going to kill me.
Okay.
So that is on you guys, and I'm telling you guys that. There's a federal case going on right now in Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, Pennsylvania, all the states right now. It's politically backed. Like, I'm letting you know. I've sent evidence. Everyone knows what's going on right now. So if something happens, I'm letting you guys know. I really need you guys to call the federal authorities.
She says that everything going on in the country at the moment involving child trafficking involves her directly, as her case has been used to weaponize the child care system.
Everything that's going on right now involves me. I was literally the one that, I know I'm the one that's, my case was the weaponized family court case, and it's been used and to expose the human trafficking. My children are trafficked right now. My daughter is 12. She's being trafficked in Charleston, South Carolina. I've been fighting since she was 1.5.
Okay.
Neely was swiftly taken to jail shortly after, locked up in Marion County. From then on out, that is where she would remain. It came time for Neely to have an interview with the FBI. The interview was both painfully awkward and unintentionally hilarious. She immediately began by making demands after getting her rights read to her. She ordered the FBI agent present with her to bring her any information that they had on E-Claws. She was stopped mid-sentence and told that that would not be happening.
I need to find out what was going on because...
Well, let me back this up again.
Okay.
Okay? You're not going to find out anything about what's going on if there's an investigation.
Okay.
We don't bring information to you.
Neely began to express that she felt that she was the victim of E-Claws in this case, not the aggressor. She began to explain to the confused police officer what E-Claws was.
Okay, what is E-Claws?
So E-Claws is a corporation out of Ocala, Florida, and it stands for the Emolument Clause, which that's why they tried to impeach Trump. There's many people that have gone to jail, that are in jail. They say that it's part of the Sovereign Citizens group or Sovereign Citizens movement.
When it came to the association with the Q movement, the police asked her to clarify. She tried to play it cool, acting as if she didn't know much about the group, but explained it regardless. She felt that she could prove that there was a close connection between Q and E-Claws.
I think that there is a connection between whoever this Q is, whoever these people were that posted. I think there was a connection between Q, whoever was able to do it, and E-Claws. And I have the evidence to prove that.
For the majority of her interrogation, Neely complained mostly about what she felt was the unjustified taking of her daughters. She said that one of the daughters' uncles may be in with the cabal, saying that they might be doing all manner of horrible things to them right now.
There's a uncle that still could be hurting her. He's had her in New York City, okay, around all of these satanic worship that are hanging with all these people that are related with Jeffrey Epstein, okay. He's had her in New York City. He's friends with the
She said that since he's, in her words, a gay and a trans, he's probably in on it with the Kardashians.
But he's gay and a trans, so he has sex with all the people that are with Kim Kardashian or Khloe Kardashian. They're all in a big, they all hang out, right? They do all these things to all these kids.
During the interrogation, she also falsely claimed that, although she had been sent to several mental health facilities in the past, they all deemed her to be fine. Toward the end of the interrogation, it seemed that Neely had slowly come to realize that E-Claws were nothing but fraudsters.
So being that Chris had said that on numerous occasions, on the show, because they did a show called Kirk's Law Corner, right, on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday night. So all of that's basically he was just blowing smoke up everyone's ass?
Pretty much. Because he wasn't even a legal attorney.
The agent then explained exactly how everything went down to her in terms that she could understand, leaving her bewildered.
Yeah, everybody has their own scams and schemes and everything else. He played on the hearts of everybody else that's had their kids taken just like he had his taken. He was not fit to be a parent, and apparently there's a whole lot of other people that got involved in this as well. Weaponizing a computer system to have kids removed is horseshit. It's horseshit.
No.
That's all.
That's
all made up.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that you're not smart. I'm thinking you got wrapped up in a bunch of conspiracy theories. And what you believe you have evidence of is just evidence of made up conspiracy theories.
So when he would say that he filed stuff,
He filed it where? Not in our federal courthouse. Nothing.
Not in Ocala.
Nope.
At all.
No.
By the time this interview with the FBI was said and done, Neely was left on her own, looking pretty defeated. Christopher's murder by one of their own moderators sent the whole E-Claws community into a frenzy. Despite the fact that Neely had confessed to the shooting, Christopher's partner, Kirk Pendergrass, instead chose to predictably blame his death on the deep state. He simply said, "You know how the deep state doesn't like to be exposed." Eventually, Neely's trial came about. The courtroom was filled with both the families of Neely and Christopher, ready to see her fate play out. The trial wasn't very complicated, given the mountain of evidence against Neely and her confession. Not only that, but Neely decided to act as her own attorney. The judge told the jury to deliberate for as long as they needed. Eventually, it came time for the verdict to be read. Neely Petrie Blanchard was found guilty of first-degree murder with a firearm. Neely broke down and cried. Christopher's family and followers did very much the same. Being her own attorney and all, Neely wanted the jury polled. She came to find that all 12 of them felt she was guilty. Christopher's ex-wife thanked the judge for their patience and understanding in the case. She gave a big thanks to the state attorneys as well. Turning to Neely, she told her that she had taken away a man who was very devoted to his kids and grandkids, something that should be ironic to someone so devoting to getting their kids back. Still feeling that E-Clause was a real, justified legal movement, she told Neely to remember all the good that Christopher and E-Clause did. Once it came time for sentencing, it was decided that Neely would spend the rest of her life in prison. E-Clause hasn't really done near as much since the death of Christopher. The company's YouTube page hasn't updated since around 2021. Kirk Pendergrass hasn't had too great of a time over the years, being arrested on numerous occasions for a wide variety of charges, mainly failed to provide proof of insurance, driving without privileges, contempt of court, and failure to appear. Most recently, as of the making of this video, he was arrested once again for driving without a license in October of 2024. It appears that he doesn't really do anything with the E-Clause company at this point in time, leaving its online pages virtually dead. He isn't even listed as an admin on their Facebook page any longer. It seems that the company is either defunct or on an indefinite hiatus. Field McConnell himself was arrested and detained in 2019. He was incarcerated at the county jail in Pierce County, Wisconsin, waiting to be extradited to Florida on multiple felonies. The charges included felony aggravated stalking, threats to kill/cause bodily harm, threats to conduct a mass shooting, and an act of terrorism. Specifically, this was for continually harassing the lawyer of the mother of a missing child. It was a long time coming, as Field had threatened to end the lives of many people on his show live throughout the years.
You will be disbarred before November 10th, and the penalty for child trafficking is death. I hope you hear what I just said. Is a child trafficker and a traitor, and she's going to pay for it with her life. I am going to say, oh, great, Kim loses her head. Thank you. Well, she is. I mean, thank you very much, Funkstar. That's every time I show up in a courtroom, they release them. So anyway, they won't be releasing these traitors, though. They're going to be shot by a firing squad. You know, if Miss Piggy, if it seems like I can put you in a box while singing and dancing, yeah, that's right, I can. Keep in mind that Miss Piggy down in Florida, Broward County, Florida, your name's been out there since February. Let me see if I can hold up a book to scare her. Oh, yeah, good. I'm very organized, Kim. You don't mind if I call you Quim, do you? You're not only done. It would be better for her to have a heavy millstone hung around her neck and to be drowned in the depth of the sea. You hurt one friend of mine, and I will ensure your death at Gitmo. And my word is good.
It seems that, eventually, he succeeded in having his bond lowered. He was able to pay and get released that way. Still, though, it seems he did get some jail time afterwards. The case ended in 2023 when he was given time served. The Cube movement itself has gradually lost a lot of its fire ever since COVID ended as well. This has been due to a number of reasons. A lot of the people who went big into the conspiracy ended up losing their families over it, eventually coming to the point where they would rather reunite with their families than continue down the rabbit hole. A lot of other people lost faith in the beliefs after, time and time again, Q's predictions came to be wildly inaccurate and completely untrue. After the goalposts were moved dozens of times, a lot of the people were forced to admit that maybe it was a sham all along. When Trump didn't win his original re-election, a good number of the remaining members started falling off as well. This group still does exist in various forms throughout the world, but it's nowhere near as big as it used to be. More specifically though, it seems that the era of e-claws and other companies that focused on child custody issues has come to an end. Maybe after Christopher's case, they came to realize that building a clientele up of entirely mentally ill individuals, leading them on and taking their money wasn't really the best idea. Maybe there simply just wasn't enough money coming in to make it worth it anymore. Without any sort of concrete statement, we're only really left to speculate. While Cynthia Absug is believed to be out of jail at this point, with her 60-day sentence being long over, it's unknown what she has been up to since. Her social media has remained dormant ever since 2019. It's likely that staying off the internet in order to avoid her conspiracies was a big part of her supervision. It's possible that, during these 2 years of supervision, she chose to call it quits on that part of her life. Neely Petrie Blanchard's fate is much more concrete. She is still in prison, and in all likelihood will remain there forever. Once again everyone, thank you for watching my video. If you found it interesting, please give it a like, it really helps me out in the algorithm, and feel free to subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Just recently, I've opened up a merch store. There you can get yourself some cool Dire Trip t-shirts and other stuff too. If you want, go ahead and follow me on social media. If you need to get a hold of me, that's the best way to do it, and it's the only way you'll ever hear about it if anything ever happens to this channel. I also really appreciate when people subscribe to my Patreon. There you can get videos early, ad-free, and uncensored. Channel memberships are up too, and you can get the same benefits there as well. Once again, this has been your host Kyle. Thank you, and good night.